You are now tuned in to DameSmiff.
Welcome to Musician Talks with DameSmiff. And today I want to talk to you guys about investments as an artist, specifically as an artist. But before I get started, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And share this video with anybody who's interested in the music industry, creativity, maybe artistry. It could be a painter, singer, beat maker, producer, guitarist, pianist. It doesn't matter. Just share this video with them, especially if they're interested in improving their career or improving their soft skills or just want to join the conversation about music and artistry as a whole with another artist. So, like I said, I want to talk about investing, but let me preface this with why I'm talking about this. So, big things today are happening between crypto and the stock market, unemployment, the pandemic. Everything's going so differently today. But I want to reel it back and shine a light for artists on what it really means to invest into assets as an artist. Now, the reason I'm doing this because I think this week I'm going to talk a lot about investing and kind of growing as an artist, because I just got my first big royalty check and it felt good. But the first thing I thought of was, what should I do with this check, like with this money? And I went on YouTube, I went online actually to try to see what typically is the advice out there for artists who get, royalty checks and things like that. What should they do with it? What are some things you shouldn't do with it? What are some things people have done with their royalty checks and things like that? There's not a lot of information. There's a lot of information to get you a royalty check and explaining what a royalty check is, but not necessarily how to utilize one. So before I get into all that, because I'm not the guy who's, getting millions of streams on plaques and all that stuff. I'm not that guy. But I do want to shine a light on what it means to think about investing in assets as a musician and as an artist, particularly musicians. But I think artists can kind of pull a lot of information from what I'm going to say. So that being said, let's identify the difference between an asset and a liability for a musician. A asset would be something that you could, gain from when you put your investment forward. So if you decide to get new equipment, that would be a good asset, because this equipment should improve and upgrade your skill set, and it should improve and upgrade your quality of product that you're putting out. If you're getting new mixers, maybe getting some new cables for your speakers and new mics, maybe you're getting an upgraded drum set, and maybe you're getting a new studio space. Maybe it's not necessarily just the equipment, but you're getting like a new place. These are good assets to have as an artist, especially if it's something that's financially sound. Like if you can pull that investment off while being frugal, that's even more of a plus. But to put it in perspective as to what is to compare that to a liability would be something like a artist taking their money. I want to specifically preface this with royalty checks, because this is how many songwriters make their money today. But I want to preface this to say that a liability would be something where you lose value in your investment, or you have the potential to lose it. So an example of a liability for an artist would be clothes, cars, certain jewelry, and certain investments as far as like marketing and branding and things like that. Some of that stuff is more of a liability than an asset. Like you can't necessarily expect growth from these types of investments. And so this is very important for an artist, especially early on in your career, to understand the difference, because this can make and break the habits that you'll have as you go further into your career. There's some musicians out here who are on their 30th year as a musician, 40th year, and pushing for a long time, and still don't understand these concepts. It's just a matter of just, for them, it's the journey, not necessarily the growth in the career. But I want to bring more artists in here that are focused on the growth of their career. So, with that being said, many of the investments that I've made weren't necessarily tangible assets. Like I can't recall like a statement to tell you, oh, I've made dividends and such here and here and here. But the investments I made were when I was learning music, like learning how to produce and write music for sale. The investment there was the time I put in college. Luckily for me, my college tuition was paid for. But for those of you who are maybe in high school, or maybe you're a little older but you want to go back to school, investing into your education is a huge, huge, huge asset, especially if you have the propensity to utilize your education. Because a lot of people get their degrees and things like that and can't get into the workforce. For me, luckily, the degree I got in was music technology, so that opened me up to be a little more skilled in terms of entrepreneurship, how I can touch technology in terms of music and create and things like that. So I've been able to sustain myself with the information I've learned. But that was an investment because money had to be put into that for me to get what I needed out of that. And maybe college isn't for you. Maybe you don't have the time or money to drop $20,000-$30,000 on an education right now. So let's think that it's still an asset, but still provide the investment. And the way you do that is you think, okay, if I'm an instrumentalist and I play for an orchestra or a band or things like that, and I want to elevate where I am in my career, the best way I can do that is to elevate my skill set. So it would behoove you to find someone that could mentor you or give you lessons or maybe give you some kind of some reading, some books and things like that. Those are things that can help elevate your skill set as long as you're utilizing this stuff that's out there. And you can learn and gain a lot of information from people that are willing to offer their services to you. And a version of that being a liability would be you putting a lot of the money into your image and things like that. Image is cool and it's very, very, very important, but it's not as important as where you're putting your money in terms of investments. So if you're going to invest in your image, keep that frugal, so that way you know that if this doesn't work, you haven't invested so much into it that the loss is you're making more of a loss than you did investing into that. So to give you a realistic example, you drop your first album as a hip hop artist and you're starting to get streams and things like that in your city and people are complimenting you and things like that, and you start to see the royalty checks rolling in and things like that. And the first thing you think is, all right, I got to uphold the brand and the image. And then the first thing you buy are clothes, and maybe you buy or lease a car that's, higher lifestyle status and things like that. If your next album doesn't work, those things you bought will not help you in the future. You already have them, so you're just losing value over time. So versus the artist who maybe their first same situation, their album drops and people are starting to stream it, you're getting a lot of notoriety, and they think, okay, now that I got these checks rolling in, I'm gonna take a portion of this and I'm gonna invest in a studio that I can visit that's high quality, that I can visit consistently, so that way when I have the opportunity to be inspired and write music, it's in the highest quality of studio and sound equipment and mixing engineers and things like that. Now, in the long run, even if they don't like your album, you still have the ability to afford a great studio and perform at a high level with possibly other higher artists, because those artists will be in those rooms where you could rub elbows and possibly run into people. It opens the chance for more opportunities. And this is important for artists because it's different for creatives and musicians and how they have to invest in their career versus the person who either works a job or works a business for themselves it's not a creative business, it's more of a transactional business. Like, the investments you have to make as an artist are very, very they're skill based, and a lot of them are gonna be based on where you are in your career. Now, I talked about this before. Many artists have to understand to separate the artistry from your humanity. If you're getting these royalty checks, it's very important that you are investing in yourself as a person. So things like healthcare, things like real estate, What else? Your mental health, making sure you're getting your retirement savings and things like that, setting your kids up, setting your family up, and things like that. That is all very, very, very important. It should be a priority. But today we're talking about your musical career. So in your musical career, it's going to be very, very important to understand the difference between an asset and a liability. Now, many of the investments you make as an artist that will be assets are going to be things that you will also have to like insure. So there's going to be equipment like this piano I'm sitting in front of. I have a couple interfaces, a laptop, the cable. You can get all these things insured, and this helps you improve the lifespan of your assets in terms of if something breaks or if you need to replace something or maybe even upgrade later in life, you can understand that you have the room to do so. Now, another thing to think about is systems. Investing in systems that are an asset. So a lot of artists when they're starting out, we all have done it. We have busked, which is playing outside for the public. Maybe some people refer to it as street performing, but investing in that sense would look like investing into a payment processing company. So that way, if you are busking on the street, you can maybe have like a QR code that people could come up, scan with their phone camera, and then immediately be able to send you Cash Apps, PayPal, or whatever else like that. Setting things up like that in the future will allow you to get a good income stream. Having a business bank account is another way. Getting into a budgeting tool, so that way the money you are getting from your royalty checks, you can see where it's going and how it's being spent, and that information can help you make better investments in the future. But it's also very, very important to understand that the money you're getting for your royalty checks and things like that, they have to work for you. You're not necessarily waiting on this money to just magically grow into something. You have to put that money to work to the penny. Don't have money just like, okay, I'll give you a realistic example. Some people, and I've done this before when I was working at a job, where you would get a check for say like $400, right? And some people will say, all right, I'm going to pay my bills. And say your bills will come out to like $200 just to make this quick. So now you have $200 left. Some people will go, all right, I'm going to stack this. And then what they do is they put it in their savings, and then they just wait for the next check. And then it just keeps repeating the cycle. The problem is as you're accruing more and more liabilities and spending more and more money, you're going to start to dip into that savings. And it's not anybody's fault. It's just the natural occurrence of things. You have money to spend, you would use it, and some people do the thing where many people have done it, where you take like $10 out of your savings to pay for lunch right now, thinking my next check I'm gonna put that $10 back, and you get into this rut of moving money that isn't necessarily growing. It's just you're stuck at the same 200 essentially over and over and over again. Now, the idea is to think that every time I get paid, I'm going to put 200 of that $400 check into my savings, and it's going to grow exponentially over time. But your expenses never go anywhere. So, especially if you're eventually like if you drop your album and you're starting to grow in lifestyle, the expenses are going to get higher and higher, and then the cost of living, and there's all inflation and all this other stuff going on. So, to make your money work for you in a royalty sense, you should be investing into an account that gives you dividends. There are savings accounts that give you dividends. There are 401ks. There are investment accounts and apps and things like that out there that will, if you put that $200 into an app that's going to have maybe like a 0.10% APY and things like that, you can receive a lot of dividends on that if you keep putting your 200 in that and not touch it, versus getting, paying your bills and then putting that into a savings account that doesn't give you any dividends or things like that. Dividends are very, very, very cool and very, very important. But this is, again, something that artists need to understand immediately, as I like to say, because this could make or break the many, many, many good habits you can build up when thinking about what to do with your royalty check. Now, royalty checks are cool, but you also got to remember they're not the sole income stream of a musician. So the royalty checks could be a percentage of your entire income. as an artist. So it's super dope to understand where your money's going, what it's doing when it gets there, and know this all the way down to the penny. If you have money just sitting, it's depreciating, it's losing value. You're not going to be able to add to that over time, just over the many other economical sciences that I'm not an expert in, but just the basics of what I know. So if you're a young artist, I want to pose a question. If you're a young artist, not even young, if you're an artist in general, and without giving too much detail, what are some of the things that you've invested in with your royalty checks? Were they assets? Were they liabilities? Were these things frugal purchases and investments, or were these more of emotional, like, I need this type of purchases? These type of questions are important to ask as an artist, because I've stated before in this podcast that artists in general are very spontaneous. We react emotionally a lot of times. If there's a new Supreme hoodie that comes out, we want to be the first to have it, regardless of what's going on with our bank account, because of, outside forces like peer pressure or FOMO, fear of missing out, and stuff like that. So as an artist, what is some of the things that you've invested in, and were they liabilities, were they assets? I can give you an example of a good asset that I've invested in was obviously this keyboard, but a big one was the interface that I bought. Before, when I was learning about music technology, I didn't have an interface. I would do most of my recording on the computer, straight onto the hard drive through electronic music. Like, I was using digital audio workstations and things like that, and just recording directly through there. And it wasn't until I started actually learning about like how studios function in a very basic sense, that it was like, okay, this is how you can elevate your music. This is how you can introduce brass, maybe percussion or stringed instruments and things like that into your music. And this is how also with the interface allowed me to work with other musicians a lot more, because I had the ability to include their input into a lot of the music that I was making. So that was a great asset for me to invest into, because it opened so many doors, and I've had so many more opportunities working with it. And I still have the same interface I work with. It's a Scarlett Focusrite 2i2. But some of the liabilities that I bought into were possibly like marketing and things like that, like trying to buy ads for music and stuff, which didn't really turn into much. See, the thing about marketing is that you have to have a lot of money to put that forth to work in your benefit. And what that means is, if I were to put up an ad or maybe buy a billboard or something like that, that doesn't stop the amount of work I have to do. I would still have to do busking. I would still have to present cold calls to people to listen to my music. I would still have to shop beats. I would still have to produce for other people. It doesn't necessarily mean that this direct investment, like say a billboard, is going to bring me any value back immediately. So that's all I have for you today. This one was a little longer, but like I said, this week I'm gonna try to dig into more about royalties and royalty checks with artists today, just to kind of level set where this community, meaning either hip hop, rock, jazz, wherever. If you're an online artist right now and you're streaming and you're on Twitch or you're on YouTube or Instagram or whatever, and you're doing your thing, odds are you are receiving royalty money if you've published and got everything in order. And I just want to level set and understand where we are as a community with what we're doing with this money and there's assets. So yeah, that's all I have today. I think tomorrow I'm going to talk more about I actually don't know. I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna write it down and figure it out. But that's it today. That's it. Musician Talks. This was episode 34, and we talked about royalty checks and investments today. And that's all today. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. I'm here every single day, except for Wednesdays between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, that's me. I'm DameSmiff, and I'm out.